Hey guys, as promised, I wanted to get back into doing some of my videos, and I decided because today was my dedicated cardio day that I would start with some of the benefits of cardiovascular training and kind of how to get some of those. So, to jump right into it, because I really just want to focus on benefits of cardiovascular training because those are what I try to keep in mind these days in terms of like motivation when I have to get to the gym, because like focusing too much on like diet and just having to do it is kind of like crushing in my experience. So I try to think about how it's actually making me better. So number one is you are strengthening your heart. Now, this comes through a wide variety of means. Your heart's physical muscle gets stronger. It can perform the same amount of work for like less beats. So like highly trained athletes, their heart might beat like 40 beats per minute, as opposed to like a healthy regular person might be 60, assuming no like conditions or anything. So heart's just stronger. You get more blood vessels for the blood to travel through. You might build more red blood cells, so more oxygen is transported with that blood. You get more like buildup of mitochondria in the cells themselves. Like the mitochondria are larger, so more energy is being produced in the cells. All these great things mean that you're just, like I said, your heart is just better. It's just stronger. Now, why is that important here outside of just being better at exercise? The most obvious to me is you're just going to live longer. Now, of course, that's assuming you don't like get run over or something, but in general, well-trained, like athletes who are well-trained cardiovascularly just have a much lower overall mortality from all causes. If you have a heart attack, well, first off, you're less likely to, but if you have a heart attack and you're someone who's been doing hours and hours of cardio a week, which no, you don't have to do, but I'm just saying, like, as an example. And, so well-trained athlete gets a heart attack. Their heart is just so much stronger and they have more blood vessels and all that they are much, much more likely to survive that event. And this extends to most causes of death, because one of the way death kills you is from your heart failing, from lack of oxygen, so on and so forth. So you're just going to live longer on average. Your ticker will last longer. It has to work less hard through your lifetime overall because of that strengthening in just day-to-day work. It's just better. Now, life and doing things just becomes easier. So, or as Greg Doucette likes to say, I like to give him a shout out here because I'm a very controversial guy, but he's kind of what got me really invested in cardio in the last few years anyway. Calls it being a better butter burner. So, what this means is you are able to do more for longer than you were before. To give an example, if you are in okay shape and you're 150 pounds and jogging / power walking 15 minutes per mile for an hour is about as much as you can do without actually no, let's not even say an hour, because that's like an hour of cardio is a lot for a lot of people. Let's say you do that for 30 minutes and you're pretty winded. So you just walked / jogged 2 miles and you're like tuckered out and you're going to be sore. You're probably going to be sore the next day. Heart rate got decently high. And through that, because like I said, 150 pounds, you can scale it up there for any body weight. To do 1 flat mile, that's around 100 calories. So, in that 30 minutes of tough cardio for you, you burned 200 calories. Now, keep training and your endurance improves, and your like muscles get more used to it, you're like just you get less sore, you mentally get more just adapted, and it just becomes less exhausting in general. Now, you can do that pace for, let's say, an hour. Now you're up to 400 calories. Or, because you're now in better shape, your VO2 max, your ability to process oxygen and use it to convert other like food sources into ATP is higher. So now you can go faster without being quite as fatigued, heart stronger and everything as well. Now you can jog a 10-minute mile, and it's not quite so bad for you now because you're getting more used to this exercise. You're like, oh, I kind of like this. And 30 minutes, it doesn't feel that long anymore. 10-minute mile, 3 of those, 30 minutes. Now you're burning 300 calories in 30 minutes instead of just 200. Fast forward a couple years, you get like pretty like into running if you choose to pursue that. It doesn't have to be running, by the way. It's just easy numbers for me. Now suddenly you're able to jog a 8.5-minute mile, let's say. It's not like perceptually hard for you. You can maintain a conversation. You enjoy it. You're not getting sore or anything. And now you're running 7 miles in an hour. Almost more than 3 times what you were doing in a session at the beginning. And it feels easier than that did, because you're just that much stronger and that much fitter, that much more adapted to it, so on and so forth. So now a 6-7 mile run for you is like a little like power walk for Joe Schmo from the beginning. That's awesome for a few reasons. First off, you can burn off way more calories. Now, exercise isn't the best way to like lose weight or anything, and I don't really encourage focusing on calorie count with this kind of stuff, just because of the kind of negative patterns it can lead you down. That said, and of course diet's way more important. That said, if you're doing cardio for the other health benefits and everything, now suddenly if you choose to want to burn fat, if you're like finding it, if you find yourself in the position where you can burn like 700-800 calories, or let's say 600 calories in an hour is like an easy, casual, like fun jog for you while you listen to a podcast or something, you're going to be able to burn off a lot more. And sure, like on average, people eat back some of it, and like there's reduced activity in the rest of the day. You can offset that with a step tracker, so on and so forth, and by not overdoing it and fatiguing yourself. But it's still there. It's still super beneficial, and you're still like you can stress yourself with diet a little bit less if you're getting a good bit of physical activity. Or if your step count is even like easier to get than it was before. Because I can tell you, for me, someone who like earlier after my shift, I went to the gym, already had 12,000 steps, and then I ran 9 miles. And it wasn't that big of a deal. Do you think for me it's very hard to get my like 10, 15, 20,000 steps? No, it feels great. In fact, on days I don't run or anything, it's like a huge mental reprieve to only get 15,000 steps. And sure, my diet's like really on point and everything too, but I know that I don't have to restrict my calories at all. I do keep them under control by other stuff I've talked about in my other videos. I eat very healthy, but I eat things I like, but I eat a good bit of them. And the synergy of the two is really beneficial. Also, physical activity, cardio's especially higher intensity cardio or long duration cardio, when it doesn't go over a certain length, tends to also suppress appetite to an extent. So you're kind of resting, just static. Body fat percentage might just be a little bit lower to begin with, just because you don't want to eat as much. You would think it would be the opposite, but for example, after a 9-mile run, like I said, sure, I'll get like some signaling to like eat after that, especially just from time passing, but I don't feel like eating like 900 calories back worth hungry. This is helped by eating really filling foods and like a lot of fiber, fat, protein, so on and so forth, but it's overall still a really big effect. So these are the mental effects. So I find personally, and I think there's a lot of data to support this, saying I think isn't very encouraging though, that cardiovascular training, or really this goes for training in general, including weightlifting, but I am going to just bring it up here because cardiovascular training is a type of training, does improve mental health on an individual basis. Now, I don't know all the mechanisms for this, but if I had, because like runner's high, not everybody gets it, though you should give yourself time. Like, don't go for a run don't go from couch potato trying to run 3 miles and wonder why you don't feel good afterwards. But that's a little bit more subjective regardless. But in general, doing a lot of like good physical activity, not overdoing it, is beneficial for sleep. That's a really big one. Sleep is like pretty much the number one thing you can do for your health. Anything that makes sleep easier is going to benefit you drastically. Of course, I'm not saying these are like cure-alls. It's very individual and it's relative to like your baseline. If you're like a huge insomniac and you need pills to sleep, I'm not saying running is going to fix that or anything. Number 2, just mood boosts. Lots of people report they start doing more physical activity, their mood relative to them is improved. I know for me, somebody who struggles a lot with depression, cardio doesn't fix it. I'll admit that right off the bat. If I'm really depressed and I go for like a long run, I'm probably still going to be depressed afterwards, but I definitely feel better. It takes the edge off of it, and I at least have that sense of like, well, I did something, you know? And I did something good for myself. Now, as promised, how to get these benefits I'm talking about. So, it kind of depends on how much time you have. Ideally, the American Heart Association recommends around 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity activity. So let's say zone 2 cardiovascular training. That is aerobic activity where, let's say, as I've heard it described, you can talk on a phone, but the person on the other end will be able to tell you're exercising. It's your heart rate's up, let's say 50 to like 75% of its rough maximum. And to give you an idea, this isn't a hard rule of thumb. Take 220 minus your age, gets you the ballpark of your heart rate, max heart rate, till you can figure it out through testing. That kind of activity I'm talking about with the talk test. Do 2.5 hours of that a week, and that will get you a lot of benefits. Don't start too strong though. You don't want to start off with an hour of cardio. You're gonna be super sore. You're gonna hate every minute of it. The time is gonna drag. If you're like a badass or whatever, and you can force yourself to do it all, like just day after day after day for month and month and month until you like it or whatever, sure, go with that. Do your hour a day. For everyone else, I'd recommend starting with 10, 15 minutes or so. If you can do longer, go longer, and just slowly add a minute here and there until you're doing like a 30, 40-minute session a few times a week until you get up to that 150 minutes a week of your chosen activity. You can do multiple. I started with the Stairmat. Well, actually, I started with the incline walking on a treadmill. But there's plenty of options. You can use the stair mill. You can go for a power walk. You can jog. There's swimming. Like I said, incline walking on a treadmill is super, super nifty. For reference, if you set a treadmill to 15% incline, you burn double the calories for the same amount of time. Well, same distance, specifically. Any of these are option. You can do multiple of them. You can jump rope. You can go to group classes. Anything that gets your heart rate in that good zone. Now, you can, if you really, really do not have the time and you enjoy it, you can do interval training. Specifically, now interval training is anything where you do one intensity for a time and then a different lower intensity for a time and go back and forth. High intensity interval training is what people are usually referring to when they talk about this. High intensity interval training, I slurred my words there, is where you are going all out pretty much for a certain period, typically working more of the anaerobic energy system, so when you're getting more of a burn in your legs rather than doing sprints where it's pretty much entirely ATP for 15 seconds. You're doing that for as fast as you can, pretty much, or close to it for the given time frame. So if you're doing 40 seconds high intensity intervals, you're at that 40-second mark, you are begging to stop. And then you rest 3 to 6 times longer than that, typically, to recover. And then you do it again. So the thing about high intensity interval training is that it is really cool. A lot of us really enjoy it. I really enjoy it. I don't enjoy it in the moment, per se, but I think it's awesome. I like listening to rock music and feeling like Goku or whatever while I'm doing my intervals on my bike. But not everybody likes it. And it can really mess you up. Especially if you're trying to also lift weights, which I strongly recommend. Doing that at a lot of high-intensity intervals is not necessarily a good idea. Me, personally, I typically do interval training 2 to 3 times a week at absolute most, sometimes only 1, because it takes a lot out of you. This is something you probably want to get cleared with a doctor if you have any concerns at all, because your heart rate is getting really high and you're pushing really hard. It can be a bit of a pain to set up. Treadmills aren't always good for it if it's shorter intervals. Stairmaster can be really, really fast and it can be easy to trip. It's tough. Now, can it get the job done? Yes. When you're recovering from those intervals, even though, like I said, the energy system you're working, doing high intensity work is, well, actually, let's say either type of interval training. If you're doing sprint intervals, which are really, really short and don't even really build up lactic acid super noticeably because you just run through your stored ATP so fast, or if you're doing regular high intensity intervals where it's that lactic acid type thing, neither of these are directly using the aerobic energy system. So, theoretically, they're not the best for the heart strengthening adaptations I mentioned at the beginning and what I was so strongly encouraging the moderate zone 2 stuff for. But research is showing that the specificity there isn't as rigid as you might think, or as we might have thought in the past. You do get benefits from interval training. Now it's much better if you at least do like a session here and there of aerobic stuff, like 30 minutes to like an hour or so. But you do get those benefits from these types of training, especially if you mix them up. This is partly because when you are resting between those intervals and you're gasping for breath, you're kind of switching over primarily to your aerobic system to kind of make up for the oxygen debt you get, so to say. Your heart rate is super, super high, and then your body has to work to get it back down and get you back to baseline. It also has other benefits. These are like things like when you do a bunch of lactic acid level stuff, your body gets better at processing it. You can go a little bit faster before it builds up, depending on what the type of intervals you're doing are, so you can get faster overall. You can sprint for longer if you're doing those. The main benefits of these in terms of like performance in general, as opposed to overall just feeling good and being healthy, they're more geared towards just sports performance, like doing a bunch of sprints and everything. They will have health benefits. Like I said, there will be bleed over. But for the most part, especially for how draining they are and how much you probably want to do a few of them a week if you're not doing aerobic training, with how draining and hard on the body they can be, they're going to give you much more benefit towards your like percentages of speed, like on the fine edge of performance, as opposed to making your heart like way stronger and way more efficient and everything. Again, there's overlap here between all of these. I recommend doing all of them to some extent, mostly few sessions of like easy stuff a week of your chosen form, and then maybe one session of either like high intensity interval training if you like it, or just hard like aerobic intervals. So let's say like 4 minutes of like as fast as you can maintain for 4 minutes of that given activity, 3 or 4 minutes like slow like jog kind of speed, and then 4 more minutes, do that 4 times. Comes out to about like 25 minutes, I think. That'll build up your VO2 max, which is still aerobic, but you're also getting a lot of benefit of training your body to process oxygen better. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds there without having to do the super, super hard stuff, like sprints and HIIT training that is more for athletes. But again, if you like them, they're still beneficial. They still replicate a little bit of the benefits of the others. I just don't like the focus so much on them. One common belief, especially kind of based on some old information from my understanding, is that doing like a few minutes of high intensity interval training would basically drastically boost your metabolism for like hours and hours, like days on end or whatever. So it would like get you super shredded just doing sprints a couple times a week. This isn't, as far as I'm aware, actually the case, because that's kind of now there's benefits with musculature and everything, but the main thing they're referring to here is called the afterburn effect, which pretty much is you keep burning calories after exercise to recover and everything. Problem is the afterburn effect is like 10% of the calories burned of the work done during the exercise. And it actually comes from aerobic work too, and it's more pronounced the longer the duration or the more intense. High intense interval training, you're not going to burn many calories during the session, just because, thought experiment. What are you going to do? How many more miles are you going to do? Are you going to get more miles in at an easy jog or like walking? Or are you going to get more miles done sprinting as hard as you can until you're like about to throw up, and then not like just barely like slogging along for a few minutes over and over again? I can tell you right now, you're not getting a whole lot of miles in You're not crossing much distance, and distance, like, times mass is, like, how you're going to find out how many calories are burned. You're not going to do much of that doing, like, sprints and everything. So, if you get 200 calories burned during an interval training session, over the next, like, day or two or whatever, you'll burn, like, an extra 20 calories recovering from that. If you run 6 miles, you still get the afterburn effect. Now it's 60 calories. You can, as a benefit, I should have touched on at the beginning, but I'm bad about planning out my videos. You can build muscle from these, from cardiovascular exercise, particularly biking, from what we've seen in, like, the research I know about. Especially, like, if it's a bit harder, or you're pushing yourself in general, regardless of the modality, you can build muscle mass in the limbs used. So, like, biking can build muscle in your, like, quads, hamstring, well, less hamstrings, but, like, quads for the most part. This is more pronounced in beginners. If you're a bodybuilder, or just a serious weightlifter in general, like, if you've done squats seriously, or leg presses seriously for a while, you're not going to build muscle mass by biking, probably. You might, but it is something that can be done for someone who's beginning. So you will see some of those benefits. Probably especially the harder, more intense stuff. So, in summary, cardiovascular exercise makes your heart stronger, makes you able to better get oxygen through your body, less likely to die in general. It improves your metabolic health. You're less likely to develop type 2 diabetes. You just, life gets easier. You can burn more calories for the same amount of time. You might build some muscle, and overall, you'll probably feel better and sleep better. Couple do 2, 3, maybe 4 hours a total week. Doesn't have to be, like, split up in any given way, as long as the sessions are, like, 20 minutes or longer, of aerobic activity where you can maintain a conversation, but you're a bit out of breath. Shorter the session, maybe go a little harder. Do that a couple times a week. Maybe once, like, couple times a month, do some sort of interval training. One of the ones I mentioned here, you can also look online or just ask me and I can give some recommendations. And you'll reap most of these benefits to different scale degrees. All right. I'm not really super happy with how the video turned out. Could have been a lot more organized. Definitely learned a lot doing this, and my next ones I'm going to try to put together a little better. But I hope someone enjoys this. Someone enjoys listening to this kind of longer format thing. I know I ramble a lot, but I hope it was at least a little bit interesting and a little bit motivating for you to pick up some aerobic activity of your own. All right. Good night, and I'll see y'all soon.